Hello, welcome back. We are on episode 36. Can't believe we're on episode 36.
Yeah, 36 episodes
Wow.
already, right?
Thank you all for tuning in and coming back and
probably
seeing
at least
us.
50 to go.
50?
Yeah.
Oh. And then we'll probably start something else, I'm sure. We have a lot to discuss.
Yes. So, in the previous episode, we saw all the attempts, by Yeshua to free his brother, Yohanan. But nothing is working. So the whole group is now leaving Jerusalem on the way back to the Kinnereth Lake. And when I say the whole group, I mean it's Yeshua and 15 of his closest disciples. And in fact, the promises, the coming of Herod to Jerusalem was just a rumor with no foundation.
Oh.
Yeah, so everybody was disappointed.
There was rumors back then too, huh?
There was rumors back then, yes. And basically, nothing was keeping the group in Jerusalem, in the city. So they decided to leave. And so Yeshua is saying goodbyes to his uncle because he has been staying for multiple weeks with his uncle Yusuf, But he's also at the same time trying to see Myriam in the garden, but there is no success.
Oh.
Somehow she's hiding. And Yeshua knows that she's there, but she's playing that old game.
I wonder what makes her think she could hide from him.
The ruse of the heart.
Yeah, the little games.
Yeah, which of course did not fool Yeshua because he knew she was there, right?
Right. Yeah.
But it caused in him an intense reflection. And I think we're going to understand what is happening, okay? Because toward the end of this presentation, we will be doing a dialogue from the book of the Three Marys. And we will go through the feelings of Myriam.
Right, what Myriam's thinking.
Yes, what she's thinking and feeling at that time, yes. So on their way back to the lake, the weather is overcast and fresher than usual, which allows the group, to go a lot faster. And it's also more pleasant. And they are traveling on the way to the towns of Capharnaum and Bethsaida. And again, we will be posting the map, to show our audience, exactly what's going on. Yeah. And Yeshua, again, on the way to the lake, is delighted to see the deep blue of the sea, of the lake. And he appreciates enormously to be back, despite the failure of their trip, I mean, they tried everything they could. And so Yeshua, on his way to the lake, is thinking a lot about Yohanan, and he knows that he could have freed him, easily. But he also knows that he would have cheated with life, and he would have been a traitor to what is living inside him. He has very high principle and very high expectation. And what Yeshua is thinking is, in fact, by trying to offer at all costs this form of light that we call freedom, the freedom that he wanted to give to Yohanan, right? He would have invited in himself a part of darkness. Okay? So I think it's important. It's always this balance between the light, you think you want to do good, but there is also a cosmic plan.
Right.
So the divine plan that he committed to would have been falsified and corrupted in a certain way.
It's really interesting how he even knew that, right? Like he knew he had to, it's just, this is the plan.
And plus, if you remember, Yohanan didn't really
it's almost like he knew.
Yeah, Yohanan knew it too, and he didn't show any enthusiasm for being freed. So.
Right.
Yeah. So Yeshua turns inside himself again, and he's trying to find some inner joy, some jokes and funny stories for his group. And at one point, he tells his disciple on the way walking to the lake, did you notice how easy it is to go incognito in the streets of Jerusalem? It is so crowded that it is easy to go unnoticed. You guys were all afraid with your fisherman clothes. And Barthélemy, picked up immediately on that, and he goes, Master, we talk about this among ourselves. And it remains a mystery. To be honest, sometimes people notice us, sometimes they don't. But every time we were not noticed, it is when you were walking in front of us.
What do you think that is?
So
is he cloaking them?
Andros is saying, I always had the sensation that you were opening or closing a path, or that you were controlling the eyelids of the people around us.
Controlling
yes,
the eyelids.
It remains a mystery.
Oh my gosh,
so
that's funny.
Yeshua wants to develop this question. He wants to talk to them about, more seriously about what it is. And when he has something serious to tell to his disciple, he has a certain way of doing it. And the way he does it, he's wearing a veil also, and he brings the veil in front of his face to cover his eyes, but he leaves his mouth open, right? So they only concentrate on what he says.
Oh, okay.
And it's a way, basically it's a sign that you have to go inside yourself. And he goes, my friends, tell me, according to you, what makes a man or woman more noticeable? So they all goes with different answer, right? His clothes, his demeanor or the gait, his way of walking, his stature. And Eleazar says, Eleazar thinks he wants always to be the best, right? The teacher pet.
Right.
And he goes, no, his way of speaking. And Yeshua stopped them and he said, you are all correct, but you are only looking at the obvious side of things and not the real reason. You are all interested, and I want to help you discover the other side of life. No, what you notice of a being, it is before all what the eyes of flesh cannot see. It is that halo, that luminous vapor that the soul projects around itself, and today I guess we call that the aura, right? Yeah. And the appearance of a body is noticed, but also quickly forgotten. That's not what really hits you. But that luminous vapor or the light exuded by the soul imprints itself all around and is in everything. And it is the essence of charisma. When you say people, he has a lot of charisma, and it's because their aura is radiating a certain frequency.
It's got good energy.
Yeah, that we like to be with,
Right.
So Yeshua continues, if you learn to suck inside you this vapor, which is around you, you will go unnoticed and become invisible. Nothing about you will imprint itself.
Well, that makes sense.
Yes.
But I didn't know you could actually do that.
Yes. And we saw that in one of the previous episodes when he's waiting to meet his mother, right?
Right.
He's in the harbor of Capernaum, I think, and he's basically making himself invisible.
He wants to get a little bit smaller.
Right, exactly.
I want to say smaller.
Yes, smaller.
Yeah. Bringing all that feel.
Barthélemy goes, Master, will you teach us how to do that? And Yeshua responds, no, I will not give you anything that may be used as a power. No free lunch.
No free lunch.
It will be up to you by your work and mastery of your own light and aura. All the things you will be able to do will be the fruits of your work. Okay? And then he adds, if the sun is a sun, it is because it constructed itself patiently as a sun should do it. So Eleazar finally asks, okay, now that we know how to do that, tell us, are you asking us to hide in the crowd or to reveal our presence by your side? And Yeshua responds, what do you think is good, Eleazar? Eleazar goes, to be unnoticed, Rabbi. Obviously, Eleazar got it wrong. Yeshua tells him, is that you, Eleazar, saying this? Even if you wanted to be hidden, you no longer can. I'm already in you. And when I say I, it's not about me. Do you understand? It's this energy which is emanating from Yeshua, right? Now, go back to work. Meditate on your heart and ask it, what do you want to risk? Because this is all about risk, right?
It is, yeah.
Especially at that time, right? I guess freedom of speech didn't really exist, so you had to be careful.
Yeah. I'll keep my mouth zipped.
So the following evening, everybody's in Bethsaida, and some of the disciples have, rejoined their family, while Eleazar and Yeshua are meeting Myriam, the mother of Yeshua, in Bethsaida. And of course, they're all very happy to be all together again. And Myriam at one point tells Yeshua that she's not sure to recognize him anymore. It is as if his body keeps changing.
Mm-hmm.
Constantly.
Mom would know, right?
Yeah, a mom would know, right? As well as his voice too.
Mm.
And so Yeshua recognized that she's right. There is a constant mutation which keeps operating into his flesh and his vehicle. So again, the Christic energy is working through him and changing his appearance and the power of his voice and all kind of things here.
Mm-hmm.
And there is also the old Uncle Isaac, the one who had recovered his eyesight.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And he's losing his voice with all the gratitude he's giving to Yeshua. He said,
losing his voice.
He cannot stop, thanking him and everything. So Yeshua tells him, okay, Isaac, instead of me, you should thank the Eternal.
Mm-hmm.
So Yeshua realized that as soon as he is back into those villages, it is becoming impossible for him to walk alone in the streets or on the shore of the lake. He has to find a refuge in the hills or into some olive tree orchards. And of course, what happened is that Barthélemy and some of the other disciples have been telling the villagers, about the massive healing that took place in Jerusalem.
Okay.
When Yeshua healed 30 people at the same time. So now we have big groups of people who also want to benefit from that,
Following him around.
Yeah. And of course, Yeshua could not be upset with that, and it is necessary that men and women came to the breath of God and not so much to Yeshua. So you see that as an opportunity for them to come and listen to him.
Right.
So about a week later, after their return, a rabbi and 4 Pharisees are provoking Yeshua as he walked in front of the synagogue in Capernaum. So it's probably one of his walk,
Yeah.
And it was meant to be, They are speaking very loudly in order to attract as many people as possible around them.
They want to make a scene.
They want to make a scene, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And they ask Yeshua, where he's coming from exactly, what does he want, and why he seems to be appearing to disturb their life and attack their faith. Faith, yes. Okay. So what Yeshua wanted, he's thinking, he was happy to tell them. It was simply to remind everybody about the love and the light which were within reach of their hands. To tell that their Father, the Eternal, was there and that they were breathing it at every moment of their life, which is quite different from the scriptures, of course. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And finally, Yeshua tells that little group, the Pharisees and the rabbi, that it is time to stop beating around the bushes with the texts, which are only creating a wall between them and their minds. Okay?
Text.
Yeah, the text, the scriptures.
Yeah, I know it.
What Yeshua wants, in fact, is that they be true, they be humble, and they see themselves as children of life. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if the Pharisees or even the rabbi can do that, but
no.
So the Pharisees are getting really upset, even more than the rabbi. The rabbi was in charge of the synagogue, and the Pharisee was kind of really coming to bring a disorder. And they are shocked by Yeshua's arrogance. They think that he's very arrogant, because and for them, it was as if he had swept away with the back of his hand, the set of all the holy text and was pretending to rewrite them all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, horrible. So Yeshua tells them that this is incorrect, as he respected the Torah, but that no holy text in any country of the world should be kept like a petrified relic in time. And the group of Pharisees ask Yeshua, why do you sing like that? And Yeshua goes, because the holy, the sacred, is the essence of life, right? My brothers, he tells them, because life is motion, that man is in the heart of that motion and participating actively. Okay, so that's the reason why you cannot put it in the writing, and you cannot freeze it. So I'm telling you, I'm not rejecting this text that you are unrolling every day. I am simply saying that this text must be updated to open, expand, and let a more joyous light come into them. A light where austerity and severity are trading space for tenderness and compassion.
Because it really needs tenderness, compassion.
Yeah, so instead of the vengeful God,
right.
and the sacrifices
and
all
animals
and all these atrocities, suggested by those scriptures,
Well, I bet they hated that.
Oh yes, oh yes, that last sentence should not have never been pronounced. Uh-oh. And then Yeshua, nails the coffin. He goes, joy, my brothers, do you know what it is?
He always asks that, doesn't he?
He always pokes the bear. So at that point, one of the Pharisees is so upset that he grabs Yeshua by his sleeve, and he just starts shaking him. And he was ready to beat him and punch him when another Pharisee stopped him,
I guess he doesn't know what joy is.
No, he doesn't know what joy is. And the crowd around them is starting to scream, because the crowd is actually supporting Yeshua more than the Pharisees.
Because they like joy.
Yeah, they like joy. And they see some hope, with what he's saying. And Peter, who was behind Yeshua, starts screaming, do not touch the master.
Uh-oh.
And at that point, Yeshua is forced to actually restrain Peter, who is ready to fight and demolish the Pharisees. So,
good for Peter.
Even in those days, there was some some issues, yeah. And Yeshua goes and turns to Peter. Peter, why all that? Let's simply go. Okay. And then he adds to the Pharisees, as the Roman soldiers say, you do not get peace by making war. So
can't believe they said that.
Yes. Okay. So this is an expression from the Romans, right? You do not make peace by fomenting war. Yeah.
They never listened to themselves, I guess.
And I guess we kept it all this time, 2,000 years later. So coming out of Capernaum on the way to Bethsaida, Peter is still fuming, and he cannot calm himself. And Yeshua realized that he's surrounded by men with very strong personality, and it took more than 2 days for Peter to calm down. 2 days. Yeah.
He was running that in his head. Yep.
The women, on the other hand, in his group, are all very quiet, and they are still not accustomed to speak freely in the context that Yeshua is offering them, I mean, we know that the group of followers is comprised of men mostly, but there are also a few women. And those women have not been able to talk for thousands of years.
Well, yeah, they only be seen but not heard.
Not heard, yeah. Yep. So it is actually Myriam, the wife of Simon, who is the first one to say, Rabbi, those hostile words the other day are not at all directed to you. We know a lot of people on these shores who respect you and are starting to see what you are bringing. The Pharisees at the synagogue with their long coats and golden necklaces are more feared than loved. Yeah. So for Yeshua, he's always thinking about what's happening around him. He's always calculating, trying to integrate what's going on. And he sees that as a problem, as he doesn't want to bring disharmony around the lake, and later on in the entire country by contamination, right?
Right.
I mean, it goes pretty fast, right? So he's wondering how to present to the soul the sweetness and the raw love which are exploding in his chest. How can I convey that? And he realized that there are still so many ancestral walls which have to be collapsed, and so many scales and shields which have to be removed.
Right.
Yeah. So it's not an easy task.
It's that way today.
Yes. Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah. And so it is during these days of reflection for Yeshua that the brother of Yeshua, Judas, started joining the group. And one morning, as they were sharing the bread, the oil, and the spices, and that's their breakfast basically, in Andros' boat, Judas asked Yeshua if he could become one of his disciples. And Judah at that point has torn a veil in himself after his mother Myriam said the following sentence. That sentence which has been used and is still used around. Miriam told her son, Judas, nobody will never be a prophet in his own family. So it's interesting that, I don't think many people know where this expression is coming from, but it's actually coming from Myriam, the mother of Yeshua. And it has been transcribed in the Gospel of Matthew, 13:57, and the Gospel of Luke at 4:24. So Yeshua is going to use those words of his mother in his teachings. And this is something, that will be repeated a lot. And Yeshua tells Judas, you have never been away from me. Even during my long journey, while I was walking in the deserts, you are my brother. You were always with me. Why should it be different today? So he's definitely welcoming him, and trying to make him feel
and make up for lost time,
right,
too, because he doesn't really know him, and just let him know I love you anyway. We haven't had relationships.
And Judas looks almost identical to Yeshua, and we have mentioned that a few times, right? I mean, he's almost a carbon copy of his bigger brother, and to the point that people start calling them the twins.
Oh, wow!
And in Aramaic, this is called Tioma. Tioma. Okay, and in certain Christian traditions, Judas is known as Judas Tioma, which later on turned into Judas Thomas.
Oh, so it's Thomas.
Thomas, yes.
Doubting Thomas?
I mean, what the Bible says, doubting Thomas, but he's not doubting at all. That's another story. Spun, okay?
Oh, no.
Yeah, but that's where the name of Thomas comes from. It's Te-Oma, which means the twin. And so Yeshua is also worried about the fact that, people are calling him a twin. But Judah tells him, I'm not at all offended. Actually, I'm rather pleased.
Kind of like it.
Yeah, I'm rather pleased that they compare me to you.
Right.
And a few days later, Judas, Thomas, all right, we're gonna call him Judas Thomas, so that there is no confusion. He comes with another young man, which has clear eyes, fair hair, with a very open and radiating face. And he goes to Yeshua and he says, "Here is Jude, our youngest brother." So this is the last son that Myriam had.
Oh, okay.
And Jude heard what is going on around the lake and he's coming to join us. And Jude is actually coming from the little village where the parents of Yeshua were living and where Yeshua grew up for a few months, in between his school training and all the travels.
Yeah.
And he says, "Rabbi, a lot of things are being told about you and many are contradictory, They say that you are hypnotizing men when they go toward you, and when they wake up, they scream that they have been healed." That's what they are saying.
Yeah.
They say that you're a magician and that you come from the desert, which has like a bad reputation, And at that point, Yeshua will continue to have a dialogue with his young brother and Judas. And after a while, Judah Thomas, takes Jude away and to leave Yeshua in peace, But okay, so this is basically his two new disciples.
Okay.
Two brothers.
Those two brothers.
Judas Thomas and Jude. Right. And we will see that Jude is going to be given another name also, but we will see that in a little while. So Yeshua is thinking, and he's telling that many, many times. He's not trying to recruit anybody, and he does not want to fish followers like it has been written in the Bible and other scriptures, He's not a fisherman, and he doesn't want to recruit. He only wants to speak, help, and heal when he sees suffering. When suffering is present, he wants to be there to try to appease everything. And after the words and the healings, Yeshua is not attached to the outcome. People are free to follow their path at their own pace. And that's how it should be, right? Everybody goes at different pace, different speed. And Yeshua repeats it multiple times. Each individual does not have a rendezvous with me, but rather with himself. He's always taking the point that people are not meeting him. They are meeting themselves through him.
Right. Yeah.
And Yeshua can clearly see also that his younger brother, Jude, would come and join his group when the time was right. And we will see that Jude will come later, a few months later, when he's mature enough. So the souls around the lake, are awakening, opening up. It is obvious for that population, A lot of women are now joining the ranks. And of course, this is very disturbing for the Pharisees. They don't like that.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, and their followers too. But Yeshua is not worried. And maybe he should have been worried a little bit more. But anyway, that's the way it goes. And the women are actually the one asking the delicate question, much more than the men. And I think the millenniums, so many hundreds and thousands of years of repression and spiritual dryness have actually been a very good ferment for the feminine energy to rebel and to be active.
They have a lot to say.
Yes. I heard that. Yeah. So women around the lakes are actually freeing their heart, it's obvious. And there is also another explanation too, which is very important. And I think everybody should think and meditate on that. The women have not been programmed by the scriptures like the men are.
That's true.
Because
they weren't allowed to.
They are not going to the temple. They are not reading the scriptures, and they are not discussing
So they're able to really consume everything Yeshua was saying.
Yes. Yeah. And this is why they are responding and reacting much better to what Yeshua is telling than their male counterparts.
Yeah.
Because the male counterparts have all this programming which has been,
they've all been
indoctrinated in them, and it's very difficult for them. And I would like to mention a couple of them. Peter and Andros are the most reluctant to accept women among the ranks of Yeshua. They are so misogynistic. They just cannot stand women. Peter, the founder of the Catholic Church, right? Officially. And Andros.
Well, that's why women couldn't be priests, I guess, huh?
Among other stuff.
Didn't like women. Okay.
Yeah. And so for months, those two are going to be bickering and complaining about the female presence in the group. Yeshua sees that their flesh had been programmed to reject the women as disciples, and they don't think that women should be involved into any spiritual discussions. And I guess it still goes on today, in certain countries and certain religions. Yes. So a few Sadducees also are joining Yeshua, but some are disturbed by what they hear. Others are trying to understand what's going on, And Yeshua always asks them, why are you thinking in this way? Is it because your parents and ancestors told you so? And they were always saying no. No. That is, in fact, because of the sacred scriptures that was leading their behavior and their life. So it's always interesting that people don't want to accept the responsibility of their act, by saying, okay, well, they have a wicked personality or they have stupid habits. No, it's the scripture always that tells them to act in a certain way, you know. And so to prove them wrong, what Yeshua is doing, you know, and with his fantastic memory, is reciting by heart the sacred text. But when he gives the explanation, he's bringing a different light, a different meaning to them, you know, which is, of course, in contradiction with what the rabbi and the Pharisees are teaching, you know. And this is why Yeshua does not like the text. And I think it's important. He's saying it again in the Akashic memories. Yeshua has never written anything from his hand. So if one day you come into the, you know, so-called gospel of Yeshua or Jesus,
well,
whatever.
There's the red letters of Jesus.
Oh, well, he has never written anything. Okay. So, all right. And he insists on that, you know. This is very important for him.
Yeah.
And the reason is because what is written becomes frozen. You know, it's stuck. It is not evolving. It is not accepting the motion of life, the constant transformation. Yeah. So a few of the Sadducees, you know, are enjoying the oral jousts, you know, that is happening on the place, on the squares, you know. And at that point, you know, Yeshua just leave the arena, and he with Eleazar, they are both walking away to another village, you know, so they can heal and do something active, you know. And this is his way of loving, instead of wasting his time and energy, you know, into endless sterile discussions. Yeah, exactly.
They're not going to hear him. They don't want to.
No, they will not. Yeah. And so this is the way life was around the lake, you know, for months. And sometimes, you know, Yeshua is walking in the countryside. He's usually followed by between 40 and 50 people.
Just 40, 50 people.
So, you know, it's like a long, a long line of people, you know, on those little paths. And from time to time, he would observe the Mount Tabor, which is actually overlooking the lake, you know, and wonder, you know, where Elohim is, you know. But Elohim never respond. Yeah. So after a few months, Jude, the young brother, finally joined the group of disciples, and Yeshua gives him the name of Tade, or Tada, which in Aramaic means the one who has a large heart, who is tender, who is brave. Okay, and I think he's known in the tradition, in the Western tradition, as Thaddeus. Okay, so we'll try to call him Tade in. Keeping his real name. Yeah. And I was looking recently on the internet about Thaddeus, and you know, people are thinking, was he the brother of Yeshua? Yes, he was the brother of Yeshua.
He was?
He was the youngest one.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So, and of course, as people are probably waiting for, you know, Yeshua would walk by Migdel to try to meet Myriam.
Oh, let the games begin.
Yeah, and she's working with Esther, with an old woman, and her son Marcus. And they are, you know, this little group is working on plants and making essential oils. That's her passion, yeah. And there was still between Myriam and Yeshua the famous question, you know. And the famous question was, do you recognize the path that I'm taking as being yours? So Yeshua had never thought of being close to a woman, you know, and I think he's very honest. Marrying or having a close relationship with a woman has never brought, you know,
never entered his
mind. Exactly. Yes, thank you for helping me. Yeah.
Right.
And he does not even want the women to be too close to him, you know, beyond a certain limit. Even the disciples.
You think?
Well, because I think at this level, duality does not exist anymore.
Okay.
So there is no sexual or intimate attraction to someone, you know, especially with the Christic energy in him.
Right.
On top of that.
Yeah.
So, but he knows, however, that this notion of limit is meaningless if it does not serve the realization of the human being and the what he called the union of the earth and the sky. So we're going to be looking into that in more details, yeah. But Myriam is for Yeshua. I mean, that's the way he perceives her, like a ground, a rebellious ground, which had its share of sky, you know, which was open and ready for anything. Not docile, for sure, not docile, but tameable for the promise of the living. So that's what he says about Myriam.
That's sweet.
So many times he's going to try to visit her in Migdel, you know, for a meal, but he's never alone with her, of course. You can imagine, you know, 15 or 20 people behind him.
Oh, on top of that, even if he wanted to, he couldn't.
He could not.
Yeah.
And Myriam has already understood that the life of Yeshua is no longer belonging to him, right? I mean, he's a public figure.
Right.
Right. And so the relation that is developing between them is in fact completely different of what was considered at that time, right? For a husband and wife or whatever. And what is interesting is that Yeshua sees immediately in Myriam the promises of the female principles. In the same way, Mataji had 2 years before allowed him to live it. So again, you know,
Babaji's sister.
Yeah, Babaji's sister. Again, for our audience, you know, I would send you back to I forgot the episode number, but it's some kind of tantric initiation.
Right. That was all about raising his vibration.
Yes, that he had with Mataji. So, and again, we'll post a picture of the Mataji of that time. And Yeshua could feel with Myriam a possible fusion inside a sphere of complete and unlimited freedom of conscience and bodies with absolutely no terrestrial references. And again, you know, these are the words that Yeshua is using. They may seem very complicated, but that's how he speaks.
What do you think he meant by that, terrestrial references?
Well, he said because, you know, at that time, the terrestrial references were probably, okay, the women has to be serving her husband.
He wasn't going with what their traditions were.
The tradition, And he saw that, you know, as a unlimited freedom of consciousness and also a freedom of bodies as well. And sometimes, you know, Myriam would play some games and she would call Yeshua by his name. And that was scandalous for the other disciples, you know.
Oh my gosh.
And actually, secretly, Yeshua would enjoy it, you know. So by calling him Yeshua, she was conscious of her audacity, you know? And she was playing with it. But shortly after, she would say, you rabbi or master, to appease the crowd around him. And so Myriam was knowing, you know, what Yeshua was offering her, but she was afraid of it. And to receive the teachings who may turn her into the woman, summarizing all the women on the planet. And we're going to talk about that during the exchange, right? So one evening, they're under a pomegranate tree, you know. What a beautiful place to be, right?
I know.
In the backyard, you know. And she whispered in Yeshua's ear, you know, Master, is it true that you will marry me? And then she continues, since we left my father's home in Jerusalem, you have not pronounced these words. And Yeshua says, yeah, it is true. Yeshua has been quiet to create, but the reason why he was quiet, because he wanted to create that space of consciousness between them and to make sure that that space remained limitless with no locks, like wedlocks, you know, and no conditions, right?
Right.
And to be honest, I think it's one of the best space to be in.
Yeah, I agree.
And then she would continue, Master, are you in love with me? And Yeshua responds, no, I love you, which is different. And at that point, Yeshua hears a disappointment in her voice. And that disappointment tells Yeshua that Myriam has not fully understood the nature of the love that was uniting them. Okay? And the woman that she was called to be, and the man that he no longer was. So she's not grasping all that yet.
Right, not yet, but she will.
So Yeshua is going to speak to her on that evening, and we will try to merge with that presentation a little dialogue we did together from the book of the Legacy of the Three Marys.
Right. Contrary to what you may think, the following months were not easy. I got scared. I went back to Migdel for my son. I tried to start praying again according to the advice that Jeshua had given me because I had to be able to be the worthy wife of a rabbi. However, the turmoil instead settled in me. What was I going to do? This man who seemed to be promised to me almost frightened me due to his difference, and I still felt soiled and unworthy from my old break with Saul. There had been such a charitable people crying out to me that I would be sullied forever, that my soul, despite its strength, kept silent scars from it. They were what kept me from hanging on to the prayers of my childhood, those of my people. Yeshua advised me to forget all the words I'd learned and just pray bare-hearted. But what did that mean, bare-hearted? I had to surround my heart with such a shield to be able to continue to breathe during all those years. If I dropped it on the ground, what would I discover? Maybe a woman who didn't believe in anything. Be bare-hearted? Who exactly was I going to marry? Finally, a real husband or a strange rabbi? Everything was going so fast. Squatting in front of my herbs and plants, I came to doubt the miraculous hours that I had nevertheless lived with Yeshua. What had he swirled around me and in me to upset me so and so quickly? I tried to uncover it, this heart, as probably those who are a little lost do, those who carry a weight on their shoulders and have to flee from nastiness. One day, when I was still in doubt and I saw Yeshua come to my doorstep, his visit was unforeseen and unforeseeable. My first reflex was to offer him a very confident and very dignified face. But the next moment I found myself at his feet, my forehead against the ground. The impulse was stronger than me, infinitely more than the pride I had always displayed. Are you stopping by, Rabbi?
I was passing by your house.
Our conversation started very insignificantly, and then, suddenly, Yeshua planted himself in front of me, and I had the impression that we had just left each other the day before. The words he spoke to me when then are those that cannot be forgotten. They were particularly intense.
Why are you afraid, Myriam? If you say to yourself that I am the cause, you are wrong, because in truth you recognize me. Your fear, I tell you, comes from the fact that you do not yet recognize yourself. No, it is not only yours. This fear is in every human when the time comes for him to acknowledge his relationship with the Eternal. Today, be sure, the Almighty is knocking at your door. By your moon, I will be your husband, not for you to wash my feet or cook my meals, not to comfort my flesh, but to reconcile your soul in the struggle against itself. So, Myriam, I have come to seek not your body, but your soul behind your flesh, and your spirit behind your soul. Why then would you be afraid? My father is looking for a woman to become the woman, because he needs a cup to collect his seed of consolation in this world. Your people have been taught that man was created before woman, but I told you that woman was born before man. Would you believe me? If I told you that my mother, who is one with my father, is the matrix of everything, would you believe that too? You might believe me because in eternity, water, fire, and earth are as equally valuable as air. However, I will not teach you this because my Father, who is also my mother, is inseparable from her. They proceed from one another. So, understand me, man and woman invented each other. By marrying you, I marry myself. And by marrying me, you marry yourself too. You finally recognize yourself. I have come to remind you of this wonder and to tell you the meaning of our wedding. Through this, you will be asked to be all the women of this world. In spirit, I will teach you to touch my mother, who is also my father, so you may know that all women scattered throughout our creation are a little part of my mother. Finally, through our union, you will know that all men are in me, and that they are a little bit of my father, who seeks to unite with my mother in the heart of his expansion.
As you can imagine, my sisters, I was totally silent hearing these words, surprisingly ignorant as I was still of the mysteries of the Almighty. I had the sensation of understanding them intimately, of grasping their essence, their deep substance, and all they implied. Oh, I could not have been asked to translate what I understood. I would have been totally incapable of it. I, who then barely knew how to read two words and trace a few letters in the sand, those of my name, I can just say that I understood without getting the exact meaning of the words used. I knew why later. Each correct word that we correctly marry with another correct word gives birth to another little real music that our ordinary intelligence cannot grasp, but something in our soul manages to collect as soon as purity inhabits it. I understand, Master. I said, I understand. He smiled at me and then gently grabbed my wrists and looked at them as if there was something to decipher. I then looked for his eyes that I wanted to heal. I understand, Rabuni, my Rabuni. He put his forehead against mine and then he continued.
Love is sick on this earth. You must know this before anything else. If I have come to this world, it's to restore it. Do not think that I am only here to restore the love between humans and the eternal. I'm also here to heal the love between man and woman. This is, in its fullness, the primary reason for our marriage. It is not Yeshua and Myriam who meet, because both are only masks. The Almighty Lord and His creation are preparing to look at each other, eye to eye, in order to renew their covenant in infinity. Finally, let it be said that man and woman no longer mutually dominate each other, but recognize each other as heaven and earth, both indispensable, like the nameless and His creation. My beloved one, we have come to write this truth in order to trace in the invisible the core of reconciliation. Can you see it? When we truly marry, through me, my Father will teach you the breath that propels the flesh toward the spirit. He will show you the beauty and the grandeur of the earth in you, as in all women, by revealing to you the art of inviting and then welcoming the breath of heaven. It is the art of arts, the one that divinized because it puts an end to separation. The art of love, Myriam, is not expressed only in the temples built with stone. It is too often frozen there by the soulless psalmody of words that are nonetheless sacred. It is said that the union between man and woman will also be practiced in the union of their bodies, each a sacred temple, and that thus both will be able to rise. I have come to remind you and to remind all of you in this world that everyone is at the same time temple and priest, water and clay. I am nothing but the reconciler, the scale that enables a rebalancing for the reunion. Measure this truth. If, with these words, I increased your fear, you can still say no. Freedom is the seal with which your soul is marked. I am talking to the free woman in you, Myriam.
I believe, my friends, that I said neither yes nor no. It was not important. In response, I leaned my forehead heavily against his forehead, as if the emerging wrinkles of my flesh were trying to accommodate his between their lines. I then told myself that as long as I had the strength, Yeshua and I would only know one path. Before leaving my home a few moments later, he asked me to take him to the place where I used to bake my bread pancakes. So I brought him right to the back of the house. There was an old dry earthen oven there. Here, Rabuni, I said. In the hollow of my oven, a heap of ashes remained from when I last cooked. I should have taken it away a long time ago. I was a little ashamed. Before I had time to say a word, Yeshua plunged his hand into it while making a small circular movement. Then he gently removed his hand, holding with the tips of his fingers what appeared to be a piece of linen. I examined, but then he continued to move his hand, and that small piece of linen I had first seen emerging from the ashes turned out to be a great white veil. As soon as Yeshua had completely freed it from the oven in a wide and supple movement, he placed it on my shoulder. I immediately felt the fabric. It was the finest linen I had ever seen, finely woven and without the slightest stain of earth or ash. Totally amazed, I did not find the right words. I mumbled, thanked him clumsily, and as for him, he was almost laughing. This is the first miracle that I saw him perform. This was his way of emphasizing the confirmation of the pact of our souls. As you can imagine, I still have this veil. It is worn out now, of course. After wearing it so much, I keep it preciously at the bottom of my bag. When Yeshua left that day, I noticed that some men and women had been waiting peacefully for him, all this time in the shade of the eucalyptus trees that grew on the edge of the path, behind the wall of my garden. It was the same group of people who always followed him. Also, Marcus, my son, was chatting with them. I liked it. It seemed to me that the order of the world was changing and that a new harmony was settling in around us.
And I think it will illustrate exactly what we were
Their
trying.
conversation.
Exactly, yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. And, what I wanted to say is that the disciples that are following Yeshua, and they quickly understand the link that is between Yeshua and Myriam, right?
Mm-hmm.
And nobody is shocked about that, because in their tradition, a rabbi has to be married, as it is necessary for him to know all the aspects of life,
Mm-hmm.
And what they say, especially around the lake, they say, who can talk about the sea if you have never been on a boat with sails?
Right.
I mean, it's so true, right?
It is very true.
Yeah. And I think it's, I'd like to make a parenthesis here, but I think every religion should allow the priest,
Minister,
or the
pastor,
rabbi,
whatever,
the minister, whatever, to be married. Yeah.
Yeah. I think
And
it's just a Catholic religion.
the Catholic has been doing a horrible disservice,
Yes.
and fostering all kind of atrocities,
Right.
because they prevented
Mm-hmm.
their ministers.
I think it was prevented purposely.
Purposely, yes.
Very purposely.
Prevented a minister to have a normal and balanced sexual life, We won't get into the details.
No. Not at this time.
So what was really disturbing for the population around the lake, at that time, was that the women were walking with men from one village to the next. So they were not staying in their home, cooking in the kitchen, or
how dare they?
Yes, from one valley to the next valley, and they were all sleeping together in barns wherever they would stop.
Oh. Nice little commune.
Yes. So some people didn't like that, yeah. And Myriam's, Yeshua's mother, was trying to join the group as much as possible, despite all the slanders and the nasty things, painting her as a not trustable woman. They didn't go all the way to say that she was a whore, but they didn't like that she was doing that. Yeah. It's a mentality of the small villages, right?
Yeah. Small minds, small villages.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then there was another woman called Betsabe, who happened to be beautiful and tall. She was a young woman, and she had a lot of success, among fishermen and shepherds.
A lot of success.
Yeah, she was very free.
Okay.
And the interesting part is that there were three men, Bartholomew, Peter, and Andrew, who absolutely hated her.
Oh.
They could not stand her, and Yeshua had to actually teach them to respect her. And that's a famous story where he say, do not. He's telling his three disciples, Bartholomew, Peter, and Andrew, do not throw stone to that woman, because even if you do it in your mind, those stones will be thrown back to you. Yeah.
Karmic retribution.
Yeah, and also Yeshua knew that one day the population around the lake would treat Myriam in the same way that they were slandering Betsabe. Yeah. So he was aware of that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah. And again, just as a quick summary, Myriam had already left her husband, even if that man, his name was Saul or Paul, is known as Paul. He loved the wine and the violence, and a wife was not supposed to leave him. Even if your husband was brutal, violent, alcoholic, since you were married, you were not supposed to leave him.
Thanks.
So,
yeah.
So the submission that the woman had to show to her man was equivalent to the submission that the man had to have for what he regarded as the divine. When you think about it, right?
Right.
A woman had to respect the man, and the man had to respect only the divine. He didn't have to respect the woman. So, in short, as a conclusion, and these are the words of Yeshua, the woman was fearing the man was trembling in front of the eternal, and I, Yeshua, I was just in the middle.
I like that.
Yeah,
that's good.
It's quite a good summary of the situation in Palestine.
Oh, yeah.
At that time.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting, and it's fun to read their words.
Words, yeah.
We don't get to have that little insight to what they were thinking. And
no, because the scripture have been so expurged and modified, and tailored to control the masses. And, and unfortunately, all the divine feminine has been removed from the scripture.
Right.
Yeah. They only kept what they had to,
Right.
I mean, the so-called Virgin Mary is the only creature worth revering.
Right. Yeah. All right. So we thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time. Thank you.